Hey guys, it's Ashley, and today we're going to be talking about Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. Finally. If you don't already know, this is the second book in the Dark Artifices, which is the series that takes place 5 years after the Mortal Instruments. It's amazing. We follow Emma and Julian as they're parabatai, but they're also in love, which is strictly forbidden, and then we follow all of the Blackthorn children who are amazing, and then there's Kit, who is like my all-time favorite. Honestly, the Dark Artifices is probably my favorite series of Cassandra Clare's to date, and I think because we're following Emma and Julian, who have all of this experience, that the work itself is just so much better, and we can dive deeper into each of these things that we already know about, and it's just great, and I love it so much. 5 stars from me. It was a good read, and there's not really much more that I can say about it because it's the second book in the series, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't read the first book. So, with that being said, this is all I'm going to leave you guys with for the non-spoilery section. I'm just really ready to jump into this, so if you haven't already read this series yet, please get on it. It's so great, and yes, this book is also gut-wrenching, but it's so great. Please read it, and then come back and we can discuss. So goodbye, non-spoilery people. I'm gonna put this book down because it's heavy, and I don't want to carry it throughout the whole video, like I did with Akawar. Also, just want to say, I worked really hard on these shelves behind me. I'm really proud of this. And also, I got my own Voyance rune. So what I really loved about the beginning of this book is that we start with a Kit chapter in Lady Midnight, and we start with a Kit chapter in Lord of Shadows, and it is so interesting to see how much he's changed, especially when he's interacting with Jace in this first chapter. I really loved that. And then I just remember reading that part where he was talking with Alec later, and Alec was like, Jace really wanted you to like him, and he tried really hard to make sure that that happened. And I was like, oh my god, he cares what Kit thinks. They're like long lost relatives and he cares. I'm just, the tears. And then of course we get this thing with like the ocean monsters, and you know, Emma is pretending to be in love with Mark to make Julian not love her anymore, and it's just that stupid cliche, you know, situation that never works, and I was so sick of that by chapter 2, I want to say it was. I just want Emma to be with Julian, and that's all that needs to happen, okay? Jace and Clary are at the Institute in LA, and they're talking about how they have to go into faerie to find something that Sebastian left in faerie, and they're calling it this weapon. I think back to Christine's videos and how she swears that Sebastian had a child with the Unseelie Queen, and I'm like, is this weapon his child? Was Christine right all along? I need to know right now. And then we get that faerie named Ash, who Drusilla meets when she like uses the family heirloom that Jaime brings, and I'm like, because he has green eyes, and I think the Unseelie Queen has green eyes. It's very hard to deal with the fact that I won't get my answers for another 2 years. And also, Clary and Jace have that moment where they're talking to Mark. Clary, Jace, just go away. I just want to know more about the Blackthorns. I don't want to have to deal with this right now. Like, just go. And like I said, I was so done with Emma and Mark's relationship from day one, but I have to say, despite being done with their relationship, I really like their friendship. Like the moments where Emma and Mark were in her room and Mark was on the floor and they were sharing stories with each other, and I love that, you know, he can talk to her about his time in faerie, and she can talk to him about like her struggles that she's having inside of herself. And they work so much better as friends than they do in a relationship, and Mark himself is just so funny. Like, I still cannot get over it. And then we get that scene between Emma and Clary that, I will be completely honest, I didn't care about. Clary's like, oh, so you know, Jace asked me to marry him, and Emma's like, what? And Clary's like, oh, but I said no, and Emma's like, what? And Clary's like, I'm having dreams and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna die, and Emma's like, what? And I'm just like, what? Why? Okay, thanks, Clary. Can we get back to the Blackthorns now? Like, it's so sad, but this world is making me care more about the Blackthorns than it is about Clary and Jace. Like, Clary and Jace, you've had your time, you had your 6 books, now let these kids have their moment to shine. Not that I wouldn't be sad if Clary died, like, obviously I'm gonna be sad, but I'm not going to be, like, heart-wrenchingly aching. I've read Clary's story, her story's kind of ended to me. Now that she's continually in this series, I'm like, not really interested in her story as much. I also don't know if the actual Shadowhunters TV show is playing a role into like how I'm feeling about this, because now I just keep imagining Clary and Jace as Kat and Dom, and I'm like, get out of my head. Okay, that one scene where they're going into, I think it was Malcolm's like cave or the convergence point, and Emma's like, does anybody want a really close-up look of a really gross tentacle? And Christina's like, no. And Emma goes, nobody ever seems to say yes to that question. Like, she's so weird, but she's so great. Now, speaking of Christina, I just want to like delve into this for a moment. Now, my feelings toward this hot faerie threesome, as Emma put it, are very, very conflicted right now, because I really want Emma and Mark together, like really badly. But I also really want Mark and Kieran together, because I really like them. But then at the same time, Christina and Kieran have like this really weird friendship that's like borderline creepy, but also really, really endearing. And it's like, I'd be okay with a hot faerie threesome. Like, I'd be okay with that. And now Jace is here teaching Kit how to fall off of things. I'm gonna start talking about the brunt of what I wanted to talk about in this book talk. And I'm pretty sure, like, it's the brunt of what everybody is talking about in their Lord of Shadows book talks. And that is Kit and Ty. I don't even know how to put this into words, how much I adore them. Of course, now that we know that Kit and Ty are the protagonists of the Wicked Powers, we know one, neither one of them is going to die in the next book, which, like, thank God, I am good with. And two, they are going to click somehow, something is gonna happen. It's got to. I, being the great note taker that I am, wrote down 9 things that I really liked about their relationship and why I want them to get together. Here are Ashley's 9 facts as to why Kit and Ty are amazing. Number 1. Ty gave Kit pretty much all of his marks throughout this entire book. He gave him an Eratse to begin with, he gave him his Voyance rune, and then he gave him another Eratse. Every single mark that was given to Kit was given by Ty. 2. Kit is the only one who has understood that Ty has some form of autism. Now, I know that it's not explicitly stated that Ty has autism, but I'm just going to infer, and I'm pretty sure that it's right. If it's not, somebody please let me know. And the thing that I love about that is that Kit is the only one who understands Ty and knows what Ty needs without having to have loved him for years first. He just seems to know when Ty needs something and how to, you know, give that to him in a way that he understands without having had grown up with him his entire life. I just think that that's beautiful, and that is just one of the reasons why they click so well together. 3, Kit is literally the Watson to Ty's Sherlock Holmes, and it's amazing. 4, and this is a quote from the book, he enjoys the sound of Ty's voice, lively and thoughtful. 5, Ty, for the longest time, slept outside of Kit's door on the floor, and after Livy is hurt, Kit then spends the night outside of Ty's room on his floor. Just, oh my god. 6, that scene right after Livy is really hurt and Ty is freaking out and having a panic attack, and Kit just holds him and hugs him really, really, really tightly. I almost started crying in that scene. It was so adorable and so heartwarming, and I just couldn't take it. 7, Kit was the one that Ty went to when he wanted to portal to Cornwall and leave the note for Annabelle. Kit was the one he went to. Not Livy, Kit. 8, Kit tells him that if he wants to go to the Scholomance that he can, but you know, his family will miss him and that he will miss him, and Ty looks up and he's like, you would? And he decides not to go. Oh my god. This has been like his lifelong dream, and he just decides he doesn't want to go because Kit tells him that he'll miss him. And like, obviously it's for more reasons than just that, but that is the conversation that Ty decides that he doesn't want to go to the Scholomance, and I'm just like crying on the inside and I can't take it. And 9, Kit thought that Ty looked handsome at the council meeting. And it made his breath catch, and I just like cannot take it. I can't, like, I'm gonna, oh my god, somebody get me a tissue. Now, I don't mean to go into really like bad negative things like, I don't know, Zara Dearborn. I'm pretty sure that everybody here has a mutual hatred towards Zara Dearborn, and so I'm not gonna go into why she's a despicable human being. Her only redeeming quality is really that she has a lot of perseverance toward the things that she believes in, yet the things that she believes in are like pretty disgusting and horrible, so it's not even really redeemable at all, to be completely honest. And that's all I'm gonna say. So let's continue. Another little snippet from Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. John Cartwright is one of the Centurions, and they mention Marisol is his girlfriend, and I'm like, ah, John and Marisol! And then a little while later, I'm like, ah, too bad he dies. I was so mad that he died. He went from being an asshole to a decent human being, and like now he just, what does he get for it? He gets to die. So when I first started reading it and we get that one scene where Gwyn comes and tells Mark that Kieran is being killed by his father and begs Mark to go and save him, and Mark is like, no, not about that. I was like, yes, yes, Mark, yes. I don't remember half of what Kieran did to you in Lady Midnight, but I just remember I don't like him, so yes. And then speaking of Gwyn and Diana. Oh my goodness. It's such an unlikely pair, but at the same time, you saw it coming. I love their moments together. I love that Gwyn just like hums to her at the most random times. Like that one time when he just arrives at her window when she's in her home in Alicante. I'm like, what are you doing? Don't you have fairy things to attend to? I don't understand. Gwyn is the one person that Diana tells her secret to. And I really, really liked how Gwyn actually, you know, accepted her and didn't question anything and didn't, you know, he was just like, can I hold you? And they just, oh my god, it was so great. Now speaking of Diana's secret, I really didn't see this coming, but I also don't see it as such a big surprise as I guess it could have been. I really, really love that we found out that she is actually transgender. I really like it because it just shows that Cassandra Clare is working to put more diversity into her books and working to, you know, represent more people across the spectrum of humanity and, you know, putting them into a story together. I really like that. But at the same time, I've seen so many stories and heard so many stories about it, and it's just something that's so normal to me now that when someone comes out as being a transgender, I'm not like, oh my god, really? I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, thank you for sharing that. It's not like a big, oh my god moment. It's just like a, thank you for letting us know, and I'm really interested to see how this is gonna play into the story. I take it as a good thing, you know, it's just, it's becoming more of a normal thing in at least my everyday life, and so I'm really happy about that. Her story in general, just the fact that, you know, she was born David, she was the brother to her sister, and when her sister died, she kind of took on her sister's, not really identity, but sort of her identity. She told her parents that her brother died, and then she instead became the sister, if that makes any sense. I think that's what happened. And then Katerina Loss, who like, can we give a hand to Katerina, please? Like, we haven't seen her in a really long time, but since the time that we've seen her, we've learned that A, she made Kit possible, and B, she allowed Diana to be who she really is. Like, give a hand to Katerina, guys. Like, you go, girl, you go. So we're gonna spin it a little bit back to Mark and Emma. Now, like I said, Gwyn had asked Mark to go rescue Kieran, and Mark had said, nah, not about that. Well, in fact, he actually was about that. And so in the middle of the night, he just decides that he's gonna go to Faerie, as if he doesn't have, like, responsibilities now, as if he could just go anywhere that he likes just because, you know, he can. Like, bitch, no, you got a family you gotta take care of. You just can't go stumbling into Faerie. Like, we don't know if we're ever gonna see you again. Like, you can't make Julian and Emma and Christina just come after you all the time, buddy. Like, come on. We cross into Faerie and we go into the Unseelie lands, and we get to this moment where they come into, you know, different parts of the forest, and they're dead and dying and decaying, and none of their angelic powers are working. You know, they can't draw runes on themselves. Their seraph blades are going dead. Obviously, this is one of the things that the Unseelie king is planning on using in his fight against the Shadowhunters, but I just want to know, the Shadowhunters are so high on their horses, and in the end, you know, they wouldn't believe that that was a thing unless Diana and Gia hadn't found the patch of the Brosselin forest that was dead and dying and decaying because of the Unseelie king. So, like, if they hadn't believed them, what would have happened if the Unseelie king had in fact come and attacked the Shadowhunters and none of their seraph blades or angelic runes were working? As much as I love the Shadowhunters, I only love specific Shadowhunters, and the Clave in general, including the cohort, I just despise. I would have been really, really happy to see how that would have played out. Like, obviously, if every Shadowhunter that I absolutely love could have been, like, smushed to the side and maybe, like, held in safety for a little bit, and we could have just let the cohort battle it out with the Unseelie King, I would have been fine with that. Like, perfectly fine. I would be really interested to see how that would play out. And I'm really looking forward to how that actually is going to play out in the next book. I want to know if there's going to be a way to overcome this, or combat it, or what they're going to try to do to get around it. Because without their seraph blades and their angelic runes, they're just mortals. They're just humans. You know, they rely so much on these things that I really want to know what their fight is going to be like without them. Mark and Christina get sucked into this fairy revel late at night, and they end up getting bound together. And I just, like, I didn't want that to stop. Like, I just wanted them to continue to be together, and I didn't want any regular worldly stuff to get in their way. Did anybody else think that the moment where Christina was only kissing Mark because she had drunk the fairy, drink and thought that she was under some kind of spell was the same thing that happened when Clary and Jace were outside of the blown up manor house in Idris, and Jace was kissing Clary only because he thought he had demon blood. That is identical moments, in different series. And then we get to the scene where Malcolm comes back and everybody's just so surprised. And I'm like, okay, haven't we learned with Sebastian that when you can't find a body, the person is probably not dead? Like, haven't we learned by now? So when Malcolm comes back and everybody's like, oh my god, Emma didn't kill him, I'm just sitting here like, I mean, duh. And Arthur then sacrifices himself so that Malcolm can have Blackthorn blood, and then Malcolm raises Annabelle, and it's really creepy because Julian is seeing this all happen through the scrying glass and fairy with the Unseelie Queen, and we see Annabelle raised from the dead, and then thank god Annabelle has some sense because then she kills Malcolm. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much. Like, you have redeemed yourself as a dead person. And I mean, granted, she completely throws that redemption away toward the end, but, I'm willing to put that aside for now until we get there. The level of ruthlessness in Julian is unreal. Like, I thought that Julian was ruthless in the first book. No, he takes it to a whole other level in this book. It is insane. That moment where he tells Emma that he knows how to break the parabatai bond, but he would have to, break every other parabatai bond in the world, which I just thought was a very weird way to break the bonds. Like, I don't know. I just was like, really? We have to break all of the bond? Really? Oh, okay. But he's willing to break everybody's bond to be with Emma. You just, hang on one moment. I love you, but you're scaring me a little. So we find out that Kieran, can't remember anything at all that happened. He thinks he's still in love with Mark and that they're still in a relationship, and I'm just like, wow, how awfully convenient that Kieran somehow forgot everything that happened that made him hate them, and then they got to use him to their advantage. And then right before they were going to use him, the Unseelie King gave him all of his memories back. Like, wow, how convenient. So the Unseelie Queen then goes ahead and makes deals again like nobody's business. So if Julian and Emma and the gang can find the Black Volume, they're to give it to her. And then they are going to end the Cold Peace, which in return will get the Unseelie Queen to give the Shadowhunters her army to use against the Unseelie King in the war. She is going to say that Helen and Aline are going to be appointed her ambassadors, so they're going to get to come back from Wrangel Islands, and she's going to tell Julian exactly how to break the parabatai bond. She just told him that they can break it, but not how to break it. What I love when they reach the London Institute is how Jessamine is there as a ghost, right? And everybody in the book is like, who the hell is this? And every one of us are like, oh my god, Jessie, you're back! That dramatic irony, you guys. It kills me. Something that I really loved about this is that we get to see more of Drew. And Drusilla just really does not play a big role, but I have a feeling that she's going to play a bigger role in the next book than anything. And if she makes it to the Wicked Powers, which I really hope that she does, I don't see how we can kill her off. I'm really interested to see how she's gonna grow up and who she's going to become. I really want her to play a bigger role. I love that she has that role with Jaime and kind of hiding him, and also whatever happened when she touched that heirloom and she met that fairy. I just love her so much, and I want her to feel like she matters more than she thinks that she does. I love how Kit and Ty and Livy are only 15, but they're able to go to all of these random places. They're like, oh yes, we'll go to the Blackthorn Manor, and oh yes, we'll go get this from Magnus, and we'll go do this, and literally in every single one of them something goes wrong. Something that I didn't understand is that Emma and Julian go to the Polpero house where Malcolm used to live, and they find all of his journals and everything, and they're trying to learn more about Annabelle and the Black Volume, and I'm thinking, why do they have to stay at the house? They found all of these journals and they found all of these drawings and they're just reading through them. Why could they not go back to the Institute and have everybody look at them? Why did they have to like send pictures of everything and send it? Like, they're not doing anything. They have no reason to stay there when they've already found what they need and they just have to read through it. I mean, I can't remember, were they trying to lure Annabelle or something? Like, were they thinking that Annabelle was going to come to the house because that's where she had been before? I don't know. And like I said, we get appearances from older characters just like Clary and Jace, and so when Magnus saved Kit, Ty, and Livy from the Shadow Market and then portals them back to the Institute and we see Alec and his kids are there, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. How adorable. So that conversation that Julian and Emma were having right as they were trying to catch the Piskies about the family mottos killed me. Emma goes, so what's the Herondale family motto? Chiseled but angsty? And Julian's like, if you don't know what your last name is, it's probably Herondale. And Julian goes, Morgenstern, when in doubt, start a war. And Emma goes, has even one of us ever been any good, like ever, seriously? I love them. That scene where Mark and Christina and Kieran were all like dancing in the ballroom was just very weird. Like Mark and Christina dancing, it was like cute, and then all of a sudden Kieran came in and I'm like, okay, this just got really weird. And then Kieran goes and kills his own brother for Christina's life. I can't with this three-way relationship. I really cannot. And can we just talk about how Emma kills one of the 7 riders of Manon? Like, how? How? She literally killed the unkillable with Cortana. And then, at the end, she shatters the mortal sword. What are they going to do without one of the mortal instruments? Like, this is what the foundations of the Shadowhunter world is based off of. Jonathan Shadowhunter, the Angel Raziel, and the 3 mortal instruments. How are we going to deal without one of the mortal instruments? I am like freaking out on the inside knowing this. What is going to happen to Emma because she was the one who shattered it? Like, is it gonna have any kind of repercussions on her? Because she did feel like she had lightning zapping up her arm. I'm like, okay, what hasn't been done to her sword arm already? Like, she stabbed the black volume and something happened to her arm, and now she shatters the mortal sword and something happens to her arm. Too many things have happened that don't add up, and I just am really hoping that we get an answer in the 3rd book. And then Julian and Emma have the sex again, and I'm like, oh yes. Oh yes, keep going. You guys do you. You do you. And then the moment where Magnus walks in and he's like, my god. And then let's go back to Jaime for a moment because I'm still very confused as to why he's even here right now. The story behind it is that when the Cold Peace happened, the Rosales were forced to give up all of their possessions that they had gotten from Faerie. Well, they had an heirloom that they didn't give up, and what happened was the Dearborns wanted it. The Rosaleses told the Dearborns that only a Rosales can handle it. So Zara then decides that she's going to get married to Diego and become a Rosales, and meanwhile Jaime is taking the heirloom and vanishing. What is stopping Diego from just going, nuh-uh, no, not about this. I don't understand. Again, Zara is a despicable human being. And Emma finally tells Julian about the Parabatai curse. Why did it take you so dang long? Why? If we could have just told him to begin with, none of this would have happened. Like, do you see how easily he dealt with it? You told him that, and he told you what the Unseelie Queen told him. Like, he's not freaking out about it. He's not panicking. He's just trying to find an easy solution to it. I don't understand why she was so afraid to tell him this. And so now that we're nearing toward the end of the book a little bit, I'm gonna try to summarize the backstory of what happened with Annabelle and Malcolm as best I can. Okay, so all this shit happened in 1812. Annabelle fell in love with Malcolm, and her family hated her. Malcolm and Annabelle broke into the Cornwall Institute to steal the Black Volume because the Unseelie King promised Malcolm that if he got the Black Volume for the Unseelie King would give him protection. Because the Unseelie King wanted the Black Volume to raise his dead first heir that somehow died or got lost or something. The Clave then captured and tortured Annabelle for information, but Annabelle didn't know anything because Malcolm hadn't told her that the Unseelie King was the person who wanted the Black Volume. They tortured Annabelle and gave her back to her family, who in turn then buried her alive. That's great. Then they told everybody that she became an Iron Sister, and for 100 years, Malcolm believed that. For for some reason, I don't know. After 100 years, when he finds out that that was all just a ruse and she's actually dead, he wants revenge. So he goes to the Unseelie king, who then tells him that he needs the Black Volume again, and because the Black Volume has been, you know, kept in the institute with the Black Thorns, he refuses to go in there. So he waits until the Black Thorns then leave for the LA Institute, and when the Dark Mortal War thing happens, I don't know what word it's used, but when that happens, he then takes his chance, steals the Black Volume, kills Emma's parents, and halfway raises Annabelle. And then of course, he tries again with Tavi, and that doesn't work, and then finally he raises her with Arthur. And that is where we are now. That was so freaking complicated and like so unnecessary. So we're gonna go back to the whole Parabatai bond problem thing. They tell Magnus their problem, and Magnus is like, oh, you should go talk to the Inquisitor because Robert will understand. And they're like, oh, why will he understand? And I'm like, because of Michael Wayland. And this is another thing that if you haven't read the Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy yet, you wouldn't know. So a really long time ago, Michael Wayland and Robert Lightwood, they were Parabatai. And Michael Wayland fell in love with Robert and was telling him, and Robert completely shunned him. Of course, Michael Wayland left, and then Robert went with the uprising, and then he got exiled, and then his Parabatai bond kind of weakened to the point where he didn't even know that Michael died. I'm assuming that the reason that Magnus thinks Robert will help them is because of what happened with Michael. He's thinking, well, my Parabatai was in love with me, and when I was exiled, I didn't even know that he had died. And if, you know, these two are in love with each other, I'm gonna try to do whatever I can to help them, you know, get out of this and keep them both alive so that they both can remain with each other. You know what I mean? I'm just assuming, but it's like, it makes sense, right? Their plan is to exile Emma so that she can go to the Mexico City Institute with Christina, and hopefully the Parabatai bond will kind of deaden, and then they're going to get back together, I'm assuming. To that, I just say, well, good luck. Because now Robert is dead. They just can't win. I swear to God. And I hadn't even thought about this until I was flipping back through the book and I realized that Robert had died. And I was like, wait, so what does that mean with the exile? Because they were the one he was counting on. And of course, in that short amount of time that they had with him, he hadn't drawn up the exile plans and hadn't put it into play. So whoever they put in charge as the next Inquisitor, that person is not gonna be for this. There's no way. They can't trust this person with this secret, which makes me then think that Julian is going to be that much more for breaking all of the Parabatai bonds so that they can just be together. I feel like Julian would be that much more inclined to choose the other choice, and that's just something that we really don't want him to do. So then we get to the council meeting at the very, very end. It was just disgusting because of the cohort. Like, I am so sick of the cohort. I'm so sick of it. Can we please just throw all of these horrible prejudices aside and just stop and just be humans, please? Anyways, I'm just completely done with the cohort and I want them to die. So the entire council scene just really pissed me off because the whole time they brought out Annabelle and they were like shouting like, ew, disgusting, why do we believe her? If we're really gonna play this, you know, who would you believe game, can we please use the mortal sword on Zara? Because Zara seems so dead set on proving Annabelle wrong. I'm like, okay, if you truly want them to believe that you killed Malcolm, will you please use the mortal sword so that there is no shadow of a doubt that you're lying? Oh my god, I don't understand why they would be so adamant about disbelieving her without using the mortal sword to prove Zara right. And then we get the scene with Magnus in the room and Magnus passes out and Alec mentions that this is something that has been happening recently. It's something that's been happening with warlocks and they're trying to figure out what it is, and I just want to know that everybody's gonna be okay because I love my warlock friends as much as everybody else does. Without Magnus and without Tessa and without the warlocks, like, the Shadowhunters don't really have a chance. And then Helen comes back, which is just a really, really great and heartwarming scene where all of the Blackwoods are just like crying. And then Alec tells Zara off. Zara is going on and on about how, like, oh my god, how could you fall in love with him and how can you be with him if you know that you're gonna die and he's just gonna live forever? And then Alec, being amazing, and I didn't know he even had this in him, he comes back with, I will be a uniquely lucky person because there will be someone who always will remember me, who will always love me. And Zara's like, what makes you so sure? And Alec's like, because he's 3,000 times the human being that you will ever be. And I'm like, oh my god, you go, Alec! And then we get the whole whirlwind of things that happen at the end. So when all of this stupid commotion that could 100% have been avoided, Annabelle stabs and kills Robert. which just completely blows the whole exile plan out of the water. Diego takes Kieran to the Scholomance for Christina for protection, so we don't know what the hell's gonna happen with that. Emma shatters the mortal sword, like I mentioned before, and in addition, something else happened to her arm, and we don't know what it is yet. And then, the thing that literally just completely broke the entire family apart. Annabelle stabs Livy and kills her. I had a feeling that it was going to be Livy because we had been seeing a lot more of her in this book, and she had started to mean a lot more to the other people in this book. I recently watched Emma Book's interview with Cassie Clare at this past BookCon when she was saying, have any of fans ever actually predicted things that were going to happen? And Cassie was like, well, yeah, there was this one person who predicted that this character in Lord of Shadows, Livy, was going to die because her death would have been the most destabilizing to the entire family. And I realized how right that was. And it wasn't only destabilizing to the family, it was destabilizing to the audience too, to us. Because throughout the entire book, we had seen so much more of Livy. You know, we had seen her kiss Kit, which, like, it wasn't a big deal, but it was her first kiss. Which, you know, when we experience that with the character, it's like we're kind of growing up with them, and it's a really great feeling. And then in addition to that, she told Julian that she wanted to grow up and head an institute. Livy had hopes and dreams that we wanted her to achieve. She has feelings and relationships with her family, and all of a sudden she's dead, and all of that just crumbles to the ground. The moment that really had me crying, it wasn't that Livy died, it was the way that Cassie described Julian after she died. How she described him making this sound that was just pure anguish and was completely inhuman. He just clutched her to his chest and he was just crying and sobbing and just so in shock that it was just disbelief, and that is what had me crying more than anything in this entire book, because I love Julian to pieces, and seeing his worst fear in the world come true is just, again, so destabilizing to him and his character and his family, and I just don't want to know what's gonna happen in Queen of Air and Darkness, you know, in the aftermath of this. I can't even think about this anymore because I'm gonna start crying, so just, we're gonna leave it at that. So many things that I want answered in Queen of Air and Darkness, but so many things I am so scared to face in that book too. Now that I'm reliving all of the emotions, just no, I'm not ready. And those are all of my thoughts for Lord of Shadows. Oh man, that was a long one. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you have a favorite or least favorite moment of Lord of Shadows, or something that you're really thinking will happen, like a prediction that you're making, something like that, please let me know down below any of your thoughts. Like I said, I'm super anxious and super scared to get to Queen of Air and Darkness now that I'm like really imagining it. So I'm really excited to, you know, have that first book in the Last Hours trilogy to kind of hold me over and push my feelings down for this book. And that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye!